Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. You know, when we look back at history, especially World War II, it's so easy to get caught up in the macro, right? The massive troop movements, the shifting borders, just the sheer terrible scale of it all. But today, we're zooming all the way in. We're looking at the micro. We're going to unpack how that vast global conflict was actually lived and felt during one single, deeply human family reunion in July of 1944. We're following the Seaver family. And through their weekend gathering in San Diego, we're going to uncover a really powerful story about just trying to find some normalcy in the middle of absolute chaos. And this right here really grounds our entire journey today. Janet Seaver said, "I've decided I'm allowed to be frightened and also fine, both at once." Wow, that is the absolute calculus of the home front in 1944. It's all about how we survive turbulent times by holding two totally contradicting truths at the exact same time. You can carry the terror of a loved one deployed in a global war and still sit at a kitchen table drinking your coffee and actually be completely fine. Keep that incredible balancing act in your mind as we go through this. All right, moving to section 1, the urgency of arrival. So to really understand this, we need to look at this tight, highly anticipated timeline. It kicks off Friday morning at 9:30, picking up Ed Seaver from his naval base in his pressed summer khakis. Then it's a quick pivot to the Santa Fe station at 11:05 a.m. to meet the train bringing his wife, Janet, and their toddler, Peter. From there, we move to a quiet Friday afternoon, settling into the Chamberlain house over in Kensington, and the whole thing builds up to a Sunday family dinner at 2 p.m. This timeline really grounds us. It's a reminder that history isn't just decades and eras. It's happening hour by hour, minute by minute. Now, I want you to put yourself right there on that train platform. The Santa Fe station in San Diego was absolutely humming. Servicemen everywhere, civilians hauling luggage, just a massive amount of kinetic energy. The comings and goings of 1944 were definitely not routine, and you could feel that urgency in the air. So the great train slides in, 3 minutes late, and it brings with it the hiss, the immense weight, and the very specific smell of a 4-day journey across the American West. The doors open, and bam, the platform just erupts. But notice the incredible contrast in how people handle this arrival. Look at Ed Seaver. Amidst all this chaos, he waits with this absolute specific stillness. No fidgeting, just pure focus on finding his wife and child. He spots Janet and 22-month-old Peter in 30 seconds, and they share this incredibly private, quiet embrace. But then, there's little Peter. The exact second Ed puts him down, the kid is gone. After 4 days cooped up on a train, he moves away instantly with the absolute conviction of a toddler who finally has space to run. It's such a brilliant clash between profound adult emotion and just pure kinetic kid energy. Okay, section 2, the women of the home front. So now we shift away from the chaotic public station and into the intimate sanctuary of a home. Ed's sister-in-law, Betty, and his wife, Janet, had actually been writing letters to each other for 8 whole months before this Friday. Think about that. 8 months building a bond purely through the mail. And the beautiful thing is, when they finally meet face-to-face, there is zero adjustment required. Janet instantly recognizes a kindred practical competence in Betty. Their postal friendship just clicks right into reality. It's like the letters were just a warm-up. It's right there at the kitchen table where Janet admits she's terrified for Ed, but also fine. And that brings us to the very definition of the home front experience. It's this intense psychological balancing act. You have to compartmentalize the terror of a world at war just to maintain your daily routines, to establish some sort of normalcy, and to carve out those essential moments of joy. These women were carrying the emotional burden together, finding real strength in their shared calculation that, yes, their husbands will come home. Because life stubbornly continues, right? And joy always finds a way. By Sunday, the house is packed for a family party. Aunt Dorothy has baked a cake based on Janet's New England recipe, the Leominster spice cake, but tweaked for California pantry conditions. And get this, these women, carrying the weight of a global conflict, are standing in the kitchen having a dead serious debate over spice ratios. Janet decrees the nutmeg is right, but she notes the cardamom is slightly more forward. When Dorothy offers to dial it back next time, Janet says she actually prefers it. It just goes to show, even in the darkest times, we still care about the little things. We still debate cake spices, and we still find deep comfort in baking together. Moving on to section 3, a language of their own. So while the adults are busy discussing Pacific campaigns and cardamom, the actual future they're fighting for is hanging out on the living room floor. It is fascinating to watch these two young cousins. On the left, you've got Betty and Fred's infant son, Randy. He's quiet. He prefers his blanket for maximum stability, just evaluating and processing everything around him. And on the right, you've got Ed and Janet's son, Peter, almost 2 years old and just full of kinetic energy. He's systematically auditing the entire perimeter of the house, like the space was built just for him. So what happens when these two totally different orbits finally intersect? Well, the adults actually quieted down just to watch this miniature negotiation go down. Step 1 is the approach. Peter, who rarely stops moving, spots Randy, stops, and executes this very deliberate toddler fall to sit right down on Randy's blanket. Step 2, the offer. Peter says something in his partially decoded toddler language. And step 3, the acceptance. Randy tilts his head, processes the info, and responds directly with a perfectly rounded ba. Then, Peter reaches out, gently touches Randy's knee. Randy puts his hand right on top of Peter's, and Peter announces to the whole room, "Randy, ba ba." With just that simple phrase and a massive smile from Randy, Peter establishes the name for their long friendship. As Fred pointed out, they literally created their own language. Right there, over a wooden block, completely oblivious to the war raging outside, they built a connection representing the next generation. Which brings us to section 4, the weight of a prayer. Now, I want you to really think about this question. How do you acknowledge a world at war when you're sitting at a peaceful family party? Imagine a long table set up in a beautiful San Diego backyard. It's summer, the table is loaded with fresh food, ham, potato salad, rolls, and everyone is seated with that warm, familiar jostle of family. But just outside that yard, the world is quite literally tearing itself apart. So how do you acknowledge that harsh reality without shattering the sanctuary you've built for the afternoon? Well, that heavy task falls to Marshall Chamberlain during grace, and he prays like he means it. He thanks God for the food, the family, the men in uniform. Then, he pauses. He thanks God for Ed's safe arrival and asks for his safe return. And when he says amen, this incredibly heavy silence falls over the table. It is a stark, totally unavoidable reminder of that macro conflict piercing right into their micro sanctuary. The reality of Ed's deployment is suddenly sitting right there at the table with them. But here's the thing, that silence doesn't ruin the day. Marshall expertly rescues the room by offering the ham, and the table comes alive again. But across the table, Ed catches his brother Fred's eye. Fred just raises his water glass slightly. Ed raises his right back. They don't need some grand speech. They don't need to fix the entire world. Having a table full of people, safe and together for just one afternoon in July 1944, that was the whole of it. That was enough. And that wraps up our explainer for today, but I want to leave you with this to chew on. What does enough look like in your own life during turbulent times? We definitely still live in a chaotic macro world, but the Sievers show us that resilience isn't always about grand, sweeping victories. A lot of the time, it's about holding on to the micro. It's finding profound connection over a backyard dinner, a shared recipe, or just a toddler's smile. It's about giving yourself permission to be frightened and also fine, both at once. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking for those moments of enough in your own life.